A small town that acts as a time capsule of sorts for the era of sideshows. Lax zoning laws allowed people to keep exotic animals like elephants in their backyard, as well as decommissioned carnival rides. Its post office counters were lowered to accommodate its little people population, and its fruit stand was run by famed conjoined twins, the Hilton sisters. It also serves as the final resting place of the subject of our story, the Lobster Boy.
Lobster.
The
I
Lobster
hardly
Boy.
know her.
Okay.
All right, everybody, welcome back to Jumbled episode 2. Woohoo! Everybody, woohoo!
Woo!
As I
Woo!
previously stated in the last episode that everyone was there just because it was the intro episode and we all kind of wanted to be there and get to know each other separately. All of our episodes are going to be kind of more one-on-one or one-on-four in this case, so that we can get to know each other on a more personal level. So today's episode is me, Clarice, Ivy, and Cindy. Everyone say hey.
Hello.
Hey!
Hello.
Hey, crew!
Hey, yeah,
I didn't
Crew.
like that.
Hey crew.
Hey, crewmates.
No.
Hey
Anyone
Fortnite
feeling
crew
sussy
subscribers.
today?
Feeling
Fortnite crew
sussy.
subscribers.
Something we also said in the last episode of the podcast is that we're gonna have rotating like main host. So I was last week's because I was gonna do our introductions, and this week Clarice is gonna do a true crime themed episode. Because
No,
again,
it's true.
we're the theme. Okay, we're not gonna have a set theme every single time. So today's gonna be a little bit more serious, a little bit more listen up. So grab some popcorn,
Uh-huh.
grab your dinner, I got some chips right here. We're gonna have a little mukbang and we can listen to Clarice's story.
Yeah, and I love to yap. I love to yap. Um, so first, before we start and like hop in, just like a quick trigger warning. This deals with obviously like murder. Also deals with themes of domestic violence. So if that's something that you will not you won't enjoy, just skip. It's okay.
Get out of
We
here.
forgive you. But if those topics are not as triggering for you, please stick around. I do think this story is pretty interesting, if I do say so myself, and I'm maybe biased because I just spent a bunch of time researching it and writing a bunch of shit for it. But I think it's interesting. So let's get into it. So, Gibsonton, Florida was originally a small town whose residents were mostly fishermen and lumbermen, but by 1945, the population had grown from 614 to more than 1,000, and the majority of that population were carnival employees. It quickly became like a sanctuary of sorts for people who spent their whole lives traveling in those sideshows and carnivals. They on the off season, they would live there in like the winter. And then when summer hits, the population took a nosedive because everybody was out traveling with the circuses, carnival sideshows, even freak shows. In fact, some of its most famous residents were legendary freak show performers, including Priscilla Bahano, who is known as the Monkey Girl, her husband, Emmett Bahano, who is the alligator-skinned man, and like I mentioned before, famous conjoined twins, the Hilton sisters, who featured in a lot of movies of like, I think in like the 30s and 40s, like very much like the peak of the sideshow freak show era in the United States. Its most famous resident, however, is definitely Grady Stiles Jr., aka the Lobster Boy.
No relation to Harry Styles.
No relation to Harry Styles. In
No
fact,
relation to Harry Styles.
it is spelled differently. So
Thank God.
So ectrodactyly has run in the Styles family for generations. Grady Jr. was not the first to have it, and neither was his father or even his grandfather. Because of the condition, the Styles family has a long history in sideshows. Ectrodactyly is a condition where there is an absence or malformation of a person's fingers and or toes. So it's like they have these like claw-like hands or feet. Sometimes it affects the feet, sometimes it doesn't. And that is why they call him the Lobster Boy. His father was the Lobster Boy, his grandfather was the Lobster Boy. All of them were called the Lobster Boy.
The
It's
Lobster
just the one where
family.
the there will be a lobster family later in this story.
It's the entire
Yeah.
Red Lobster.
So is his family also a part of the circus? I guess this is what we're going into.
So he, yes. So he was born into, his father was already a sideshow performer.
Oh.
And so when he was born, on June 26, 1937, it was right around the time when sideshows were already kind of a dying art form. Like by 1937, the 40s, they were still going on in the 40s, but he was like a child.
Mm-hmm.
And after the 40s, people started having moral qualms with the whole freak show.
I feel like circus was a dying art back then as well because of like
Yeah,
television and movies
it had already
became new
started to kind
sources
of
of
hit.
media.
Yeah, it kind of was already hitting its like
Downward slope.
nosedive. Yeah,
Mhm.
downward
The
slope. Yeah.
Netflix of the 1930s.
Then yeah, right. So sure. So it was
Yeah.
already like kind of going down by the time he was born, but that did not stop his father from putting him right into performances by the age of 7. So
Damn.
because he was ready to parade around his child and himself as freaks. So he was born right into this kind of like fucked up mentality,
Mm-hmm.
of like exhibiting yourself for something
Right.
that does not really need to be exhibited, to be completely honest with you. It's not that crazy. Like they don't even look that crazy. They look pretty, like it's very easy to like look past that, but I guess
Mm-hmm.
because of the era, people are love to find people that are different from like the norm and gawk. But
Sadly,
you
like I feel
know,
like disabilities were a laughing matter back
oh,
then.
and yeah,
Yeah.
and disabilities were way more, especially birth defects were way more common for
Mm-hmm.
that era. Like you don't really see a whole lot of people with birth defects. It was way more common way back when because we didn't know how to prevent them and we don't even know what was causing them. So, Grady's hands and feet were both affected by his condition, meaning he could not walk. So he often used a wheelchair. However, he did learn how to move using like his arms and hands, which rewarded him with exceptional upper body strength. So he was like a he was buff as fuck. Like he
Mm-hmm.
could fucking take somebody down, okay? Um, his first marriage would be to a woman who also worked in the carnival, Mary Teresa. Together they had 3 children, 2 girls and 1 boy. 2 of them were born with the same condition as their father, Grade III and Kathy. But he was very, very quick to take advantage of his children. And despite the fact that by the time they were born, the era of like sideshow and freak shows had been over for, I would say, quite a while by then,
Right.
that did not stop him.
He
And
just
they
he just
started,
wants to keep the family business going.
yeah.
Like
So they started performing as the Lobster Family. And there's this picture where literally it's like Grady the Third is like so teeny tiny. It's like him, Kathy, and Grady the Third, and he's like so teeny tiny, and it's just so crazy. And it's like it's just so crazy that he had him like up to view as and gawk at.
mm-hmm.
Like I don't know, it's really insane.
I was gonna say that it like kind of just reminds me of like the cycle of abuse that we see now current day with things like dance moms.
Yeah, yeah, it's like really.
Yeah, and like also like dance moms and also like toddlers and tiaras where like it's like generations of like beauty pageants. They're putting like
Mm-hmm.
their like 6-year-old girls out there to like be gawked at. It's really
I know.
wild that
It's crazy. It's crazy how much it's just like how this happens over and over and over again.
Yeah.
You
Mhm.
No one
know,
ever learns.
no, like,
Yeah.
oh my God. While Grady Jr. was wowing and entertaining people during his shows, he was truly a nightmare for his wife and kids. He was an abusive drunk that took all of his anger out on his wife and children. And he definitely used that crazy upper body strength for evil. Mary Teresa describes the horrific abuse she went through by the hands of her husband. At one point, while their daughter Kathy was pregnant, she tried to get in between them while he was beating Mary, and Grady knocked Kathy out of her wheelchair because she can't walk either, and it caused her to go into early labor.
Oh.
Oh my
Luckily,
God.
What did
luckily her
she
baby
have?
was born healthy. I know her baby was born healthy, and it was also born with the same condition. as Kathy and Grady. Kathy and Grady and all of them that are affected by this, it affects their hands and their feet.
Mhm.
For some people, it's only the hands or only the feet, but for them, it's both. So all three of them are in wheelchairs most of the time. But I do believe, I know for a fact that Grady Jr. can move on his hands, and I also know for a fact that Grady the third can, but I don't know about Kathy if she like learned how to. I'm assuming she did, but I'm not really sure. So Mary's marriage to Grady came to an end when she divorced him in 1973, finally having enough of the abuse. She then married Harry Glenn Newman, another carnival performer known as the world's smallest man. Unfortunately, with this divorce, Grady took the children and moved them to Pittsburgh, where he married a woman named Barbara. There is not a lot of information about Barbara. Like, I don't even know her last name. To be
Mhm.
honest with you, there's not a lot of information about this case at all, which I find so shocking because it's so like everybody knows, like at least if you like know anything about like sideshows and freak shows, you know like Lobster Boy.
Like it wasn't
Especially if
hard for
you,
you to find.
right, I mean, they had the
Yeah.
entire American Horror Story season based off Lobster Boy,
Yeah, there's
basically.
a Lobster Boy in the American
Mhm.
Horror Story season. And like I've genuinely never, and honestly I've like it's just so crazy that there's like so little information about this whole ordeal. But like it's just shocking to me like that I just could not find that much. And I was like, this
Mhm.
is I could find like a lot, but like not a lot when you think about it.
Right.
I have a question. So I don't know how the law works back in the day, how custody battles work, but is there
Mhm.
a reason why he got custody of those kids?
I have no idea. People gloss over this really fast in this, like in everything this is talked about. I have no idea how he got custody of the kids. I'm wondering if maybe it's because she married a different man, or maybe even she just wanted nothing to do with the
With the kids at
like
all?
not with the
Or
kids, but like with
The
like
business.
him, and she was just too scared to go against. I have no idea. Maybe just didn't want to go to court because she like didn't was like not maybe ashamed, which like obviously she has no
Yeah.
reason to be ashamed, but that is something that abused like women and men go through, is feeling embarrassed. So maybe she didn't want to go through that whole court process. And maybe it's because he was kind of a public figure, so they just like, and it could be also that they were performing in sideshows. So this was like
was she
an
okay with
income.
it previously? Like of their children being a part of it? Do we
I
know
don't
that?
know. I don't know.
Wow.
I would she was an employee of the carnival, so she probably didn't have that many like she probably wasn't that against it, but I don't really know if maybe she was seeing an effect on her
Mhm.
kids that she didn't like,
And
but
also, if he was
Mhm.
as abusive as he is, I feel like her opinion didn't
yeah.
matter.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I will say by around I think around this time the children were a little bit older, not old.
Well, one of
Grady
them
the
was
third.
pregnant.
Yeah, I don't know. To be honest with you, I don't know where that ends up in the timeline
Okay, okay.
entirely. That was just one aspect of the abuse that happened.
Gotcha.
Because I'll just tell you guys right now. They get back together
Okay,
at one point.
Okay.
So that might have happened after, but I
gotcha.
just wanted to put that together as like a,
An example. Yeah.
an
Mhm.
example of the abuse that went through in that household. So yeah, so she married Harry Glenn Newman, and to be honest with you, maybe she was with them, but with Harry because he is also a sideshow performer, so they could have been performing together for all I know.
Yeah.
But I didn't see anything that she was with them or that she wasn't with them. But he and the kids moved to Pittsburgh for sure. The first time the public got an idea of who the Lobster Boy really was behind closed doors was in 1978. Grady's daughter, who had not been born with the condition, Donna, informed her father that she was running away with her boyfriend and getting married. And apparently Grady did not approve of this boy. By the way, they were like, I think around, she was like 17. These were like teenagers, okay? Which obviously like nobody wants to hear that their teenage daughter is running away with some boy and getting married. No. But there's like, you could have a conversation. There's a logical way to go through this.
Yeah.
Mhm.
So reportedly, Grady summoned the boyfriend, John Lane, to have a private chat. When he arrived, he was not even in the home. Grady was on the front porch, and he shot him twice with a shotgun, killing
Saw that
him.
coming. Yeah.
I could find like no information about this case, no information about John. I could not find anything on this boy. I feel it's so insane to me that we know so little about him because he was literally murdered by a semi-public figure. John died in Donna's arms.
Oh.
And she recalled looking up at her father, who was still on the porch. And he was smiling. And according to her, he said, "I told you I would kill him,"
Ugh,
to his
horrible.
17-year-old daughter.
That's horrible.
And it's really, really awful. In court, Grady admitted to killing him, but said it was self-defense somehow. I don't know how. Nobody bought it though. Thank God.
Yeah.
And he was convicted of third-degree murder in 1979.
Good.
Unfortunately, he would evade prison time.
Sounds about right.
Is it?
Yeah, just
does it
murdered
have
somebody and
anything?
doesn't go to prison. How does that happen?
How
Like,
does,
It's every
does it
day.
have anything to do with his
Yes.
disabilities? Yeah,
Yeah.
Pennsylvania prisons did not have the accommodations to house someone with Grady's deformity, and he became a convicted murderer with no prison time.
Wasn't he pretty capable though? Like
Yes.
like he needed a wheelchair, but he knew how to get
Also-
around without a wheelchair.
Also,
I
this
mean,
was
I'm not-
1979.
Right.
my
Like,
mom
it's
was sentenced. She was like 8 years old.
I'm like saying, like, this was not that long ago for being for real. They definitely could have made it so that there was not a man who just murdered a teenager out on, like,
Right.
Mm-hmm.
Like,
with
he could
no
use a
prison
gun.
time. Like, he literally
Yeah,
Really, he could use a gun.
He can, and the thing is, obviously, like, like, you can't fit I don't know, like, you can't put a wheelchair in prison.
Literally. And he
Or
didn't
they
even need a
couldn't,
wheelchair,
like,
you said. He knew how to get around without one.
well, yeah, but
I mean, for the most part,
you
he
would
probably
need a
still needed
wheelchair.
one, but
Yeah, but like,
he could
And
get
you're-
around without
just
it.
like,
You're probably about to get into this, but like, did he get parole? Did any of
Yeah.
that kind of stuff? Like, was that around back then?
it's
Call me
really
uneducated,
bullshit
but
though.
like,
Yes, but
Okay,
it's
we'll get
really
into it.
bullshit. He was sentenced to a year of house arrest, a year, and 15 years probation. That's it.
The house is
For
where he
murdering,
killed someone.
for murdering a man.
he did it on the porch.
Like, you think he
And
won't do it
only
again?
1 year of house arrest. Apparently, that's what I saw. So like,
Yeah.
but like that's what was reported. A year of house arrest and only 15 years probation. So even now, I think is a little slim.
Yeah. Especially when you didn't get any prison time at all.
Not even as old as the kid
For
that he
murder.
killed.
Literally.
Literally, like, after his sentencing, Grady decided to quit drinking, and it was during this time that Mary said her love for him drew her back to him. Disclaimer: we're not going to judge this woman for going back to her abuser. Abusive relationships and the feelings that these victims go through and have about their abusers are complicated, and we don't know these people, and we do not know her, and we do not deserve to judge any of her actions in this
Yeah,
relationship.
she's got a lot going on.
Yeah.
Right.
She's
Also,
a
her
victim.
kids are with him.
And her kid,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
she has children. She has 3 children with him, and I think that
Yeah.
alone.
And it's not even like the abuse started there. I mean, she grew up disabled in a world that did not like disabled people.
Yeah,
She was as much of a victim as anybody else in this
Mhm.
yeah,
situation.
it's
so.
really it's really awful. So I just want to put that disclaimer in there, just because, like, I don't want anybody listening to this to even try and get an opinion about that, because we don't deserve to have an opinion about that. Okay, we don't know her, we don't know him, and we don't know their circumstances, so we're not even gonna. So they remarried in 1989 after Gray divorced his second wife, and promised Mary that he had quit drinking for good, which, if you can guess, was a lie. Because not too long after they got back together, he returned to his drunken, abusive lifestyle, literally after 2 weeks. 2 weeks after they got remarried.
Do you think that he is lying about like quitting drinking to essentially win his wife back?
I have no idea, because, like,
If
obviously addiction is
Yeah.
complicated.
And I will say, if
Mhm.
he was lying, going 2 weeks is impressive. Because when you're that bad of an addict, going 2 weeks, especially if you weren't sober beforehand, she
Mhm.
would have noticed withdrawal.
Yeah, and he was
Yeah.
sober. He was sober to get her back, and then they got remarried. So like he probably, I think he did have a stint.
He probably
Of
did
sobriety.
attempt, because I could imagine murdering someone might, clear your head.
And being on like house arrest, can't really
Yeah.
get alcohol that easy.
His conviction did not stop him from traveling and performing with their sideshow once his house arrest was over. So once his house arrest was over, he went right back to touring, which then this was now like the 70s and 80s. And it's like, how is there even like a freak show?
I didn't even know there was them
Performing.
at that
But
point in time.
he's on probation. You're supposed to notify your parole officer.
I don't
He
know the
had permission
details.
to travel?
He might have had permission to travel because that was probably his source of income.
Yeah.
That's
I have no
wild.
idea.
If it's a source of income,
I really don't
sometimes they
know.
let you
And
still travel.
I really don't know, but maybe he was just traveling. Well, no. I'm not sure. Their show had multiple different performers, with different acts, but Lobster Boy was always the star of the show, which is even crazier to me because he was now a
murderer.
convicted murderer. But I'm sure these people didn't know that.
Information
Because
was
to be
much
honest with
harder
you,
to
a
get
lot
back
of
then.
the news articles I found, they weren't really like national news. It was like the Pittsburgh paper. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
His performances would have him underwater catching fish with his hands, and even depicted his mother's horrified reaction to his birth, which cannot be the truth because she was literally married to a man with the same condition.
Yeah.
So there's no way that. His show began to get worse in quality as time went on. His family recalled that towards the end of his life, he would be drunk on stage and like lunge at the audience, like to frighten them, which is crazy.
Not feel like
With the
I'm gonna get
context
you.
that he murdered someone.
I'm gonna get you.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking.
It's like the video
With
of
the context
OJ.
with the context that he murdered someone. Oh. So through all of this, his abuse did not stop despite the promise that he had made her. He continued to brutalize Mary, and at one point, this is really awful. He ripped her IUD out with his bare hands. Like out of her. With his
Oh my
with his bare
God.
hands. She also once awoke to him in her face, with breath smelling like whiskey and a knife to her throat, where he threatened
Jesus.
to kill her and her entire family. And then he just like crawled away.
I'm sorry, but if he could do all this, he can go to jail.
Yeah.
That's what I'm saying.
If he
like, he's
can
very
physically
much a
rip out a
capable
woman's
man.
IUD, he can go to
Like
prison.
the thing is, like, it's like that thing where it's like you're babying somebody because of their like disability, but like you don't need to baby them.
It's the
Yeah, and
infantilization of disabled people, which it clearly is not the case in this point.
it's like they're like he is very capable. He can do things on his own. He can live on his own for sure. Like whatever. It's just so insane. So Mary finally had enough. Her and her son from her second marriage, Harry Glenn Newman III, decided to finally do something. There are different reports about what happened. The official, like everything that I read, like articles and everything, state that she went to Harry and she told him like sorry. I literally I watched that. I'm gonna read you that.
Why? Okay. Why?
What is doing it?
What is the
I
ghost?
don't
The
know.
ghost
Yeah.
loves this story.
Said that she sent Harry to find someone who would kill her husband for her. The person they found was 17-year-old Christopher Wyatt, who was a classmate of Harry, and a carnival employee. So another employee of like this carnival. They paid him reportedly, they paid him $1,500 to murder Grady Stiles Jr. Christopher crept into Grady's home while he was watching TV and shot him twice in the head, successfully completing the hit. Grady Stiles Jr. was 55 years old at the time of his death.
I thought he was gonna murder someone else.
Yeah, you would think, right? With his track
Yeah,
record.
I thought that this is where it was gonna go.
He's
What?
the closet ghost.
Shut up. like the other report that I discussed about what happened comes directly from Grady Stiles III. He was featured on a TV show called Freaks, which I did watch the episodes with. There are 2 episodes with him in it, and one of them he directly discusses his father, which obviously he does not see his father in like a very positive light. And honestly, I think that I don't know these people, but the TV show I think really takes advantage of the fact like they take him to his father's grave, which he had never visited before, on camera. So, but on it, he talks about what happened that night, and how he describes this happening, which obviously this is his mom he's talking about. So that's why I'm saying there's 2 different reports, because like I'm not gonna say he's lying.
Right.
But what he said is that his mom never told Harry to go get somebody to kill his father. What he said is his mom made a comment like something needs to be done, and Harry interpreted that as killing as killing Grady Jr. Um,
Mm.
but I don't really know what actually is the truth. I don't think we'll ever really know what's the truth, but that's what Grady the Third says happened. But all the articles I read say that Mary, ha like helped Harry pay Christopher to kill Grady Jr. I know I just said a lot of names there, but I hope that like made sense. So shockingly to me, the public and subsequently the jury were not that sympathetic towards Mary or the 2 boys. The jury like wasn't buying her defense that Grady was like an abusive asshole, that she didn't have any other option. They didn't have any other option. I generally don't understand how they didn't see that, because like
It's obvious.
it's pretty obvious.
Yeah.
And there's multiple, like all of the children were like, none of them were on his side. Like none of them were like
Right.
on Grady's side. So the jury was not convinced by this, and Mary Teresa Stiles was sentenced to 12 years in prison for manslaughter. Christopher was convicted of second-degree murder and sentenced to 27 years. And Harry, unfortunately, got the worst of it, and he was convicted of first-degree murder and sentenced to life in prison. And he would not have the possibility of parole for at least 25 years. And I would just like to say that Grady Jr. got away with killing a boy in
Literally
cold
what else but
blood
this? Yeah.
Literally.
and no prison time. Which genuinely, I cannot. Life in prison.
Meanwhile, that guy got none.
Meanwhile, this abusive
You got life out of
murderer,
prison. Like,
life out of prison. Yeah, like, I also forgot to mention that this murder happened in Gibsonton, Florida, which is the town that we were talking about before that has the big sideshow. He had retired in Gibsonton, or Gibtown as it's called, and that's where that murder took place.
Is that where he was born?
I don't really know where he was born, but I think they were
Okay.
traveling a lot, so I don't think that was really.
Yeah, true. They did travel a
Oh,
lot.
he was born
So
in Pittsburgh. Okay, he was born in Pittsburgh. That's what I
okay,
thought.
okay.
He was, so where that first murder took place, he had moved back to Pittsburgh, which is where he was born.
Gotcha.
So this happened in Gibsonton because like I had mentioned before, Gibsonton was a town like basically made for sideshow performers and freak show performers. So that's kind of like when these performers retired, that this is the town they would retire to, because like they describe it as like nobody's like gawking at you,
Yeah.
like people would in like other towns. It was all very just like normal. Gray Jr. was still a widely disliked man. Reportedly, only 10 people went to his funeral, and no one volunteered as a pallbearer to carry his coffin. Mary was released from prison in 2000. Christopher was released in 2009, and unfortunately, Harry died in prison in 2014. So that was the story of Grady Stiles Jr.
crazy.
Crazy. Obviously disabilities are no laughing matter, and I just told this story because I stumbled upon it and I found it really interesting and is something that I've not heard of before, and I kind of wanted to bring it to light. Um, Obviously, I am not a professional researcher and I still have a lot to learn about researching things. So this is just what I found. And I would love to get better and better at researching as this keeps going on. Um, and yeah, I hope you guys enjoy the story.
I know I did.
And my heart goes out to the entire Styles family and what they went through. And obviously this was not to offend, or I mean, I do not want to speak for any of them because that is not my place or our place. I simply wanted to state what I found as facts of this case.
Mhm.
Right.
And if y'all have any interest in hearing any more about any of these, I feel like we should start just saying like sideshow. But like any
Yeah.
more of these sideshow people, because it sounds like there's a lot of interesting stories, especially with Gibtown and all of that kind
Hmm.
of stuff. If you want us to go into it, I'm sure Clarice would love to go
Yeah,
down another tangent.
I researched a lot of sideshow performers of the time, and they are not all like completely sad stories, to be honest with you. And a lot of them are like, I would say, not unremarkable, but they don't have like the same type of tone as this story. Like most
Right.
of
Some of
them,
them are more empowering rather than
and some of them, most of them did not die in, like, it was, most of them do not involve murder or things like that.
Right.
Like
Mhm.
obviously it's very serious, and a lot of them went through awful things, but usually they retired into Gibtown and they died peacefully.
That's nice for them.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you so much, Clarice, for giving us that little talk. I'm super excited for whatever else you're gonna do. We
Is
have
next.
whatever else is next. That's a good way to put it. Grammar. We have a few more fun, exciting things coming up in the works. Next week, we're gonna be doing something pretty funny, I think, and it's not gonna be as serious as an
I was gonna say,
episode.
not everything has this serious ass tone about it.
Mhm.
Okay,
But
guys, we're getting back to being silly.
I think that we kind of want to like give the world everything all everywhere all at once.
Mhm.
So Cindy's also making something kind of serious and completely not giggle worthy. I think that it's not going to be funny at all, and I think that we're going to have to sit down and listen. Cindy, did you want to give us a little
Mhm.
sneak peek of your episode coming up in the next few episodes?
Maybe. I mean, this is a little spoiler. I am currently
If y'all know how to unblur an image, if y'all know what those colors meant, first of
I'm
all,
currently
seek mental help.
right now I'm currently holding
One of the most important pieces of literature.
one of the most important pieces of literature in American media that I'm currently in the works of annotating, dissecting, you know, putting it all together. It's gonna be a feat, and I would like to do it justice for sure.
So if you really want to see some of that content, please stay tuned. It's going to be one of our future episodes. And I don't know, it's a multi-part series. If it gets popular, we will be making Cindy do more.
Right.
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 Please like, comment, subscribe, follow us on all of our social medias. They'll be linked down below. If you have any podcast suggestions, please leave them down because we always are looking for more ideas. And peace. We'll just egg off egg
Bye.
yolk. Egg
Egg
yolk.
yolk.
Cindy,
Egg
do it.
yolk.
Alright, bye-bye.